What if I told you the most brutal empire in history also created one of the most sophisticated fiscal systems ever designed? While Mongol armies razed cities, Mongol accountants were quietly revolutionizing taxation, standardizing rates, tracking census data, and creating financial networks that connected 3 continents. The swords got the attention, but the ledgers built the empire. Welcome to the Wealth Timeline, where we uncover how money, power, and history intertwine to shape the world we live in. Now let's talk about the empire that rewrote the rules of wealth extraction. Before the Mongols, taxation was chaos. In 13th century Eurasia, every kingdom had its own system. China's Song dynasty collected taxes in grain, silk, and copper coins. Islamic caliphates demanded agricultural tithes and trade tariffs. European feudal lords simply took whatever they could squeeze from peasants. No records, no receipts, no system. Then came Genghis Khan. Born Temujin around 1162, he unified the Mongol tribes by 1206 and immediately faced a strategic problem. How do you sustain an army that lives on horseback, constantly moving, conquering territory that produces nothing but grass? The answer wasn't just military, it was administrative. Genghis Khan borrowed a radical idea from the Uyghur Turks and the Khitan people: bureaucratic record-keeping. He adopted the Uyghur script for official communications and began recruiting educated administrators, not from Mongol tribes, but from conquered peoples. Chinese scholars, Persian officials, Uyghur scribes, anyone who understood numbers, logistics, and governance. By 1215, when the Mongols sacked Beijing, they didn't just loot the city. They captured the tax system, the registers, the census data, the revenue models. And they kept them running. This wasn't conquest for glory, it was conquest for infrastructure. But here's the twist. The Mongols didn't invent new taxes, they weaponized efficiency. The Mongol tax system had 3 revolutionary pillars. First, universal census registration. Between 1234 and 1290, the Mongols conducted detailed population censuses across China, Persia, and Russia. Every household was counted. Every adult male was registered. This wasn't for curiosity. It was for extraction. You can't tax what you can't count. In China, under Kublai Khan, officials recorded approximately 13 million households by 1290. In Persia, Mongol administrators documented taxpayers down to the village level. This level of data granularity didn't exist anywhere else on Earth at the time. Second, standardized rates based on productivity. Unlike European feudalism, where lords arbitrarily seized whatever they wanted, Mongol taxation was proportional and predictable. Agricultural communities typically paid 10% of their harvest, collected in grain or silver equivalent. Artisans and merchants paid a percentage of profits. Nomadic herders contributed livestock or military service. Importantly, rates varied by region. The Mongols understood that a rice farmer in southern China generated different surplus than a wheat farmer in Central Asia. Flexibility wasn't kindness, it was optimization. Third, the Ortak merchant finance network. This was the secret weapon. The Mongols formed partnerships with Muslim and Chinese merchant consortiums called Ortak. These merchants received capital, protection, and exclusive trade rights from the Mongol state. In return, they financed military campaigns, managed tax collection, and operated along the Silk Road. By the 1250s, Ortak merchants were moving textiles, spices, precious metals, and ceramics across 5,000 miles. From Hangzhou to Tabriz to Sarai, the Mongols took a cut of every transaction. Not through violence, but through infrastructure, safe roads, postal relay stations called yam, and enforced commercial law. Marco Polo, traveling through the empire in the 1270s, marveled at the speed and security of trade. He wrote that merchants could travel from the Black Sea to China in perfect safety, whether by day or by night. But here's what made it truly revolutionary: paper money. Under Kublai Khan's Yuan Dynasty, 1271-1368, China became the first major economy to operate primarily on government-issued paper currency, backed by silver reserves. All taxes, all trade, all payments, paper. The Mongols controlled the printing, controlled the value, and controlled the economy. It was financial engineering on a scale Europe wouldn't achieve for another 400 years. But control has costs. By the 1340s, the system was fracturing. The Mongol Empire had always been fragmented. The Yuan in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Golden Horde in Russia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia. What held them together wasn't military unity. It was economic coordination. When that coordination broke, everything collapsed. In Persia, the Ilkhanate overtaxed its agricultural base. Trying to fund wars and palaces, officials raised levies beyond what farmers could sustain. By 1295, revenues were declining. By 1335, the state was broke and the dynasty dissolved. In China, Kublai Khan's paper money experiment became a disaster. His successors printed currency without restraint. Inflation exploded. By the 1350s, paper notes were worthless. Peasant revolts erupted across China. The Yuan Dynasty fell in 1368, not to foreign invasion, but to internal fiscal collapse. In Russia, the Golden Horde's tribute system survived longer, until 1480, but it depended on fragmented Russian principalities staying weak. When Moscow consolidated power, it simply stopped paying. The Mongol tax empire didn't fall to superior armies. It fell to its own contradictions: overextension, currency manipulation, and the impossibility of maintaining centralized financial control across incompatible economies. But here's the deeper truth: the model survived the empire. Look at global finance today. The Mongol Empire pioneered three concepts that dominate modern economies. 1. Data-driven taxation. Every government now operates on census data, income tracking, and algorithmic auditing. The IRS, HMRC, national tax agencies worldwide, they're all descendants of that 13th century Mongol Census Bureau. 2. Merchant state partnerships. The Ortac system, it's now called public-private partnerships, sovereign wealth funds, and state-backed enterprises. China's Belt and Road Initiative is explicitly modeled on Silk Road logistics. Infrastructure investment in exchange for economic leverage. 3. Fiat currency control. The Yuan Dynasty's paper money experiment failed because they printed without discipline. But the concept, government-issued currency backed by state credibility rather than commodity reserves, is how every modern economy operates. The dollar, the euro, the yen, fiat money just like Kublai Khan's notes. In 2024, global tax revenue exceeded $20 trillion. Digital currencies are rising. Governments track financial flows with precision the Mongols could only dream of. The Mongol Empire is gone, but the infrastructure of extraction, it never left. 3 things to remember. 1. Conquest without administration is just destruction. The Mongols understood that wealth isn't seized, it's systematized. 2. Efficiency and brutality are not opposites. The empire that burned cities also built the most rational tax structure of the medieval world. 3. Every empire overreaches. The Mongols proved you can conquer the world, but you can't control it forever. Because in the timeline of wealth, every rise comes with a hidden cost. The Mongols extracted more wealth from Eurasia than any empire before them. And when they fell, they left behind the blueprint every government still uses today. If you enjoyed uncovering this hidden story, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the Wealth Timeline, and turn on the bell icon, because history's next secret is already unfolding.